Marvel came out with a new comic book, uh, I believe it is a six-parter. I mean, Marvel Knights, um, the world to come. It is part of a six-issue series created by writer Christopher Priest and artist Joe Quesada. This was from the last. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, this one was from the last. This is the last. This is the image is on the last page of the first episode, the first comic book, if I'm not mistaken. And this has triggered people as the Elon versus Trump has triggered so many lovely people.
It triggered people that didn't see that was coming, but that's another conversation.
So I don't know where to start, Cameron. I'm gonna let you do your opening statement here, and then I know Lorena has some strong criticisms as well. Here we go.
Well, my whole thing is this. It's funny how in this conversation about race swapping that we've had for several years now, that people have always come with this mantra. What I hate above everything is mantras. I don't care what side of anything is. When you start repeating mantras, it means you haven't thought about anything. You're just repeating like Star Wars is dead. You're just repeating a mantra. You haven't thought about it, right? So the mantra of, whenever the conversation, which will often be a sophisticated conversation about the issues around race swapping of characters in Hollywood, there would always be somebody that shows up and goes, would they make a white Black Panther? Well, you got what you wanted, right? You got it, right, Mr. Mantra? You got it now. And so now what are you going to do, right? Where's this going to go? And so there's a lot of theories that are being, I'm not a big comic book person, but on my Patreon, there are a lot of people are. So just on the post that I made about this, there's so many wide-ranging theories from big comic book fans about what the intention behind this is. And my understanding is that this comic is being written by a very successful African-American comic, right, who's very highly regarded in the comic world. And if that's not true, someone correct me. That's my understanding. Mm-hmm. And some people have theorized, and I don't know if it's true, that maybe he is attempting to kind of, thwart some of the conversation about race by challenging things with this. I don't know,
slap in the face or something.
And some of it, some people suggest he might be doing it to essentially say screw you to the wokeness of these comics in the past. It's like this is some people. I don't know his intentions, but some people who seem to know the kind of work he does suggested that might be essential. Others said no. This is taking it all the way, right to ridiculousness. So I don't know the intentions, but I think that we should definitely see where this goes, right? We're just judging based on a panel, right? We don't know the history of this character. And, there's also, I think Lorena may talk about this, the issue of shade racism within ethnic communities, right? Light versus dark skinned. We had that with some actors just recently, in the last few years, where it's like, you weren't able to play that black actress because you're too light skinned as a black woman. I mean, we've had a broad range of this kind of conversation. So I want to challenge that people should assume anything now, but I definitely want to hear opinions of people that have made judgments. So Lorena, please.
Oh, let's see. Let's set the Wayback Machine to, I want to say, a couple of years ago, where you had the outrage, and I'm going to say in quotes, in general, outrage about the race swapping of certain characters. Okay. Not saying it was all right, because it really, in a lot of cases, it was not. But yeah, I'll drag Snow White out here for this. This is actually a prime example. So when Rachel Zegler got cast, I really didn't have a problem with it, although it's like, the title is Snow White, right? But you had people in the echo chamber saying such things as, well, she's not white, XYZ, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, okay, so you do know her father's Polish, right?
They don't know that.
And you're 100% correct. They don't know that. And this is the thing I said, her father is Polish, right? So she's not white enough. I'm going to throw that out there as a rhetorical question. She's not white enough. I mean, this is like James Bond is supposed to be, a white British guy. I said, this is the same case of saying you cast somebody who's German. Okay, yeah, looks wise, he'll pass, if he looks like it, but he's not British. It's kind of that case that's going on. But people seem to ignore that, but want to sit on the whole thing of, oh, you're race swapping Snow White, race swapping, when Latino is not a race. And frankly, the ignorance that I saw out there about that was pretty darn disgusting. But the other thing that I heard, and people defending this, because you had some folks who were just seriously freaking triggered and spurting out saying, well, how would you like it if Black Panther was white? I said, I'm so glad you asked me that question. I'm so glad you posed that. Do you really think that there's going to be that, let's say, all the Black people are going to rise up and revolt because Black Panther turned out to be white for some reason? Okay, yeah, some people would have a problem with that. Obviously, they would. However, you write a good story about why that took place, by all means, go ahead. It's like I tell people, if I want to write, let's say, a different interpretation of Othello, and let's say I made Othello Asian, so what? That's my prerogative to do that. So, oh my gosh. I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry. Anyway, bad storms here.
Well, I made it Moorish, and they never cast him as a Moor. They never cast him as an actual Muslim guy. Never cast him as that. Right, whatever. That's God's thunder there.
Can't do that. I know, like my grandmother was saying, the Lord is speaking.
I actually have a friend who's the first Muslim guy.
Let's finish your thought, Lorena.
So anyway, when I heard news about this, that so-called Black Panther was white, I'm like, really? So I read, and it's like son of T'Challa. I'm like, okay, is it like adopted son of T'Challa, or like he has half of T'Challa's DNA? So the panel that I read, I'm not a comic expert. The panel that I read has T'Challa basically saying, I gave you life. Okay. Postulate from that. This guy, T'Challa, he's got half of T'Challa's DNA. So here's the question. If he's got half of T'Challa's DNA, this dude is not white. No es gringo, es criollo, which means he's biracial. Okay. People who were saying, well, he can't be blonde. My nephew, who is biracial, has blonde hair. Why? Because my family has been mixing around in the ether since the 1500s. But yes, he has blonde hair. So what exactly is it that you're outraged about? Are you just triggered by the term white? Or did you really look into the ethnicity of what this character is? Because if he's T'Challa's son by blood, what's the problem? And are you more outraged with having to say or spurge out about, oh, Black Panther is white, Black Panther is white, they made him white, whatever, instead of the reality that he's biracial? How come you can't understand that one fundamental truth? Because it doesn't get more clicks? Which is super insulting to me when I hear this stuff and I see people running with this and are making also a lot of ignorant assumptions that people who are biracial can't have blonde hair.
Fletcher Williams, what are your thoughts there?
Well, this is coming from a comic book that's basically like Marvel Knights. It's basically kind of like a
what if?
Let's put people. No, it's not a what if. It's kind of like a future representation, but almost like, it's kind of like in the future. Mm-hmm. And the writer's Christopher Priest. He's a well-known writer. He's done books, comics. If you heard of Vampirella, he did a few of that, but he also has books and all stuff. He's an edgy guy. He is a white guy. Joe Quesada is basically one of the leaders at Marvel. He's been with them for a long time.
Yeah.
So basically, these are the big guns for this. Definitely for sure they did bring him in to kind of cause a stir in something like this. He is kind of an antagonistic character in the comic, meaning he's the evil guy, and he is from like a past relationship with T'Challa, who is now at the time of the comic supposedly gone after he had married Storm, like a while ago, Storm from the X-Men. So this is kind of like it's set in the future and stuff like that. He is a mulatto Panther, or depends where you go. You could be Triune Panther, but depending on what caste system you're using. But he is related, and he is the antagonist, meaning he's the one that's fighting to take the throne of Wakanda. But it is the writer is white, and somebody who
is
writes.
writer white? Because I've had people comic book. I don't know this writer. Because people on my Patreon were writing he's black. I don't know. Can someone clarify? I've tried to look up the image as we were speaking because he's white. I said okay. The Christopher Priest that's coming up as a photo is a science fiction novelist who's passed away. So that's the white photo I'm seeing. I don't know if that.
Christopher Priest is a black man. Christopher Priest is an African American.
Okay, that's what Google is saying. Okay, all right. Well, so if I may interject into this, so I think this is a very important conversation. I actually want to applaud Lorena for saying these things because I think, especially the last several years, Lorena and I have talked offline about a lot of these issues in our efforts on YouTube and talking to fan communities that I think there's a lot of stuff that people aren't even aware what motivates them and upsets them, and it's sometimes having someone outside's perspective can be helpful. What Lorena said here about being biracial. I mean, I am a big follower of Malcolm X. He's my personal sort of spiritual, ethical teacher, right? And Malcolm X was a light-skinned black man with red hair. He was called Red. That was his name. And he talks about it in his autobiography.
Red.
Yeah. Well, he talked about his autobiography that he was, one of his great grandmothers had been raped by the slave owner. Right. And he, that was the origin of his red hair. It was like kind of Irish. I wasn't Irish, probably wasn't an Irish slave owner, but it was red that he could trace who it was that was white in his ancestry that made him a light-skinned black man. In fact, Denzel Washington was much darker skinned than the actual historical Malcolm X was when he played him. So, the issue that I raised on my Patreon with regard to this, which caused some controversy, and I want to raise the response that was given because I have a response to that. But I want to give my idea, the response fairly, and then my response to that. So the issue that I raised for people to consider is that what we call race swapping has been going on for 100 years in Hollywood, right? And a lot of people didn't notice or care until they suddenly felt the victim of it in recent times. Like I said, Charlton Heston, love him. He don't look like Moses. He didn't, probably not 12th century BC Egyptian Middle Eastern dude. Probably not, right? And nor did he look like El Cid, 16th century or 15th century Spaniard connected to the Moors, right? And so, and nor did John Wayne look like Genghis Khan, right? Or Andy Rooney, who played a Chinaman, So Hollywood didn't care about these things. Mm-hmm. How many Fu Manchus were there that were white dude, with like slanty eye makeup, right? Hollywood never cared, and people didn't care until it was them, because then they felt it was like mocking them, right? And now you begin to understand why a lot of people felt over the last 100 years that they were being mocked by these choices. And Hollywood, for the last 100 years, gets to define who the marketable stars are, right? And then tells you, well, that's our options. Those are our options. We only had Charlton Heston, right? Because they wouldn't let other people be stars. And I'm going to give Hollywood said, nah, it's too much. So you got Charlton Heston and you got John Wayne as Genghis Khan. And now, those are your stars. So we had no choice. So okay, I want it's a moment to think about about where we are with that.
Cool. I want to bring this up. This is the limited series. This is the cover of the next comic coming out, part 2, where you have Namor up to some shenanigans in Mexico. And apparently We're going to find out the story. Will reveal the shocking developments that led to the death of T'Challa and the dark truth behind the conflicts erupting globally. También, it's going to talk about the heir. This heir apparent delves into the mystery surrounding what's happening in Mexico. So that look forward to issue number 2. I don't know if anyone's even buying these things, but that's a whole nother argument.